Here we go. Now it says it's recording. It actually told me out loud. So you're probably a busy, busy guy, right?
Not any different than anybody else, I suppose.
Oh, okay.
You know.
All right. Well, I'll keep your time and we'll just start rocking and rolling here. All right, guys. This has been the Coin Geek at Old Pueblo Coin, and today I have John Feigenbaum from the Greysheet with me. John, the most important thing to start with is, did I say your name right?
Close, super close. I go by Feigenbaum, but it's
Oh,
you
Baum. Nice.
Baum.
You got like the old original German pronunciation,
Correct. Right. Like the tree.
which is a tree. That's what I was going to say. It's a, yeah. Zwei more Kleidchen with Baum. Yeah, I'm sorry. I
Uh,
don't really know
no,
German. I have
it's a
certain
good
phrases
accent.
that I know from other stuff. So that's cool. That's
That's
cool.
a good
So
accent you had there,
yeah,
actually.
well, I took German in high school and I would not get anywhere in Germany with it though.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. So I don't meet a lot of people who use German pronunciations on stuff. So, but that's not the point here. The point is how. Tell me a little bit about your numismatic journey in life. When did you first start collecting coins?
Well, first, Ben, thanks for having me on. It's a real pleasure to join you and your podcast. So my journey started about the age of, I don't know, 5 or 6. I grew up in South Florida in Miami area, and my father was a coin collector, but he was also a student at the University of Miami, a marine biology student getting his PhD. So he would drag me to coin clubs. We'd go to the Hialeah Coin Club, for example, and to a lot of little coin shows that proliferated in the South Florida area. So I was tagging along, and he would just try to bring me along, I think, to keep me out of the house. And he would give me $1 and say, just see the, buy an Indian head cent with the most liberty you can find, or something to that effect, or the most horn on a buffalo nickel, and don't bother me for 2 hours. Come back in 2 hours, and then we'll leave.
So do you think that was a distraction method for him, or was he actually teaching you grading?
No, it was totally a distraction method for him, I think, and he was just trying to get me out of his hair while he enjoyed the coin show. But it had a perverse effect of actually working.
That's awesome. So did your dad collect? What type of stuff did your dad collect?
He famously collected barbers, so he was
Okay.
barber dimes, quarters, and half dollars. And I say famously because he published books on those in the early '90s, the complete guide to barber dimes,
Okay.
quarters, and half dollars. So he wrote some great books on those.
That's cool. I probably have some in my library. I just need to go find them.
Yeah, they've gotten quite rare. Just to find them is hard.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
Mhm.
probably very limited runs, like a lot of numismatic books. But I tell collectors all the time that the numismatic books are so much better than the interweb because I don't know, it's just the information I know I'm getting is I know where I'm getting the information from
Right.
versus the internet where I'm never really sure who wrote what, when, and where. So did you collect barbers too, or did you move on to other stuff?
I what I found was I couldn't afford anything, so I collected, and I didn't want to collect what my father collected. So I did a typeset early, and I went and tried to find, like one of each of these coins with that $1 I could spend. But really, I ultimately collected stamps, and I became more of a stamp guy
Really?
because, yeah, because at that time stamps and coins shared the same shows. So every
Yeah.
show that you would go to would be a stamp and coin show. Now I think you more hear like it's a coin and gun show, but
Yeah.
you don't see stamps and coins together anymore very often. But they were then, and so what I did was I learned. I'd memorized like the Red Book at one point. I'd really just studied it and studied it, but then I also learned the Scott catalog in stamps, and you could really cherry pick people at the shows.
Oh yeah.
Dealers have boxes of stamps, and you go through cover after cover. And find a variety that you had two little vertical lines by Washington's ear, and that was worth $100 versus 1 cent. And so I would hunt for stuff like that at these shows.
So then did you get back into coins later, or were you doing both at the same time?
Yeah, well, so stamps until college, I was sort of a mail order stamp dealer in a mirror image of what my dad was doing with David Lawrence Ware coins, and
Okay.
then I went to college, came back, and joined him full time, and the stamps really wasn't. Neither of us saw a future in stamps, although I maintained collecting them until about a year ago, believe it or not.
Oh, see that I was gonna have to go down the road, yeah. So,
Yeah.
um, I tell people frequently because we used to have stamp guys here at the shop, and stamps have just kind of dwindled. But what why do you think the stamp market died? I'm going to use "died" in air quotes here.
Well, I mean, to be literal, I think the collectors got too old, and the market itself didn't do a very good job of promoting downhill. And I would say, as a shameless plug for the product that I represent, the Greysheet and CPG guides is that the pricing guides for stamps have always been lacking. So
Yes,
I'm a
100%.
big believer in the price guide.
So one of my arguments, because I didn't collect stamps, I find them fascinating. I like paper money, and so stamps have just a wonderful roots to history and the aesthetic and all kinds of stuff. And yet, when I first started doing this 25 years ago professionally, the stamp guy, I talked to him about stuff, and I was always intrigued because he'd have the Scott catalog price of $240, and he'd be selling it for 24, and his
Right.
buyback was like 4. And I'm like,
Right.
well, who wants to play in that sandbox? And I still think that if you reissued a new stamp price guide that was accurate, people would get reengaged.
It's certainly possible, and I've talked to some of the powers that be in that market. There's some really big time. There's one really big time auction company in New York. That's a great company, Siegel Auctions.
Mhm.
But they're very high end, and then on eBay is really your home for common stamps. And there's other websites, but the problem is people really just can't figure out what things are worth, and nobody wants to spend $100 for something that the resale value is $5. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of people being taken advantage of, and I always thought the catalog is a problem. And I think that's one of the benefits that we have in the rare coin business in the collectible coins is that you don't, if you do any research at all, if you find our website or if you find 5 other websites that do some pricing, you can get, I think, a pretty decent idea of what
Ballpark.
things are worth.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer in that information helps the market because the market suffers without pricing information. So, I mean, it's like going to the park. If you don't have a weather report to tell you that driving 50 miles to go to the national park is going to be a good weather day, you are not going to go. But if you feel like you have reliable information about this, it's going to be a beautiful day, go to the park, you're going. And that's
Yeah,
the
it's
same
very
problem.
it's very important. So to get everyone caught up to speed here, what we're talking about now is, of course, John's involved. The editor, is that what's the correct title here?
I'm the CEO and president of the company.
Okay.
Patrick Perez is the
Okay.
editor of the price guide. Yeah.
So Greysheet, and for the newbies out there, this is a price guide that's put out monthly. The online version is updated daily to get all different prices, and people use this somewhat religiously. I mean, I see guys, what's the sheet price? What's the sheet price? And they're referring to this document here. Also, it's called the CDN, which CDN is Coin Dealer
Coin
Newsletter.
Dealer newsletter.
So, does someone have to be a coin dealer to get this?
You don't. You don't. I mean, but what happens is we have another guide, which I'll show you, called the CPG Market Review,
Hmm.
which is really the retail version of that other guide. Because the gray sheet is pretty expensive. You're going to spend about $30 a month to get gray sheet pricing on our website and the magazine in the mail and so on. Whereas, we understood, we heard from collectors, they said that's too much money for our budget, and dealers said we don't want everybody having our price guide. If how do we set this differential barrier? So we price the CPG at a much more reasonable rate, and I think for $10 a month you can get hundreds of thousands of prices from us, and at a retail version. So you should be able to, as a collector, price things behind the CPG guide,
Right.
whereas the dealers are using the gray sheet to do wholesale buying.
Right. So the concept is gray sheet is somewhat wholesale and CPG is retail. And of course, they're guides. I
That's
like
right.
to remind people what a guide is. It shows you the way, but it's your job to like look around and see things. Right. Again.
Correct, correct. And
Yeah.
I tell as many people who will listen that if you're buying coins and you're spending your hard-earned money and you want to understand this, use obviously we say, you should get our guides and subscribe to us, but you should also go and get information from eBay as a great resource for what things are selling for, or auction data, which is part of our subscription. But anywhere you can get information, even other price guides, will all inform you about what your items are worth, and then you can make good decisions.
Correct. Yeah. So I tell people the same thing. I mean, you can look at one source of information and make a decision, or you can look at three or four sources of information and make a decision in who's going to make the better decision as someone who's going to have the more information. Yeah,
Right.
it's never just a one size fits all kind of thing. So,
Right.
so when it comes to viewing these other auction results and eBay results and stuff, I mean the technology is so different than it was 2 years ago, but 5 years ago, let's say, or 10 years ago. How much are you guys able to rely on technology today to help you with your pricing?
We use technology extensively to help us do the work of more people than we could hire. Number one, a majority of the items that we price are based on their silver or gold or platinum content. So there's really no efficient way to manage those prices without tying them to a Boolean number that changes every minute, really, of a workday. So we update the website and digital resources every 15 minutes or so with spot price changes. So, and the other items, the more collectible items, some things don't change very often. Some things like pattern coins or even
Mhm.
circulated Indian cents or buffalo nickels are pretty stable price items. What we do is we watch live auctions and things like that for what's trending in the expense in the pricier markets,
Yeah.
and then we have a dealer to dealer exchange where people can come on and move markets in a certain way and say, listen, we're paying $175 for Morgan dollars, any Morgan dollar in MS65. Last week we were paying 165. So we know at that point that the market moved up $10, and we also know that in many different specific issues that people will come on and make markets in. So the rare coin market, unlike stamps and other things, is much more fluid than, and it's collectors should understand that the price range is tighter. That a dealer like yourself typically doesn't have as big a markup, or shouldn't, because you're turning over more inventory. It's more liquid, and it's better for collectors who because they're not paying this huge spread for a hobby that they'll never recover their money from. That's what makes coin collecting so great, is that it's
Yeah.
such a fluid market.
Right. And to make that correlation back to the earlier conversation about stamps, I also thought this is one of the things that killed the stamp market was, literally you had people buying stuff at $20 and the wholesale was 2 or 10, 2 or 5. Like it was nothing compared to what their retail price was. And I talked to lots of guys in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who used to collect stamps, and almost all of them had the same experience when they were trying to deal with stuff. And I get a lot of collectors who don't understand that if you want to make 20 or 25% on something, they think you're ripping them off. And it's like, well, I got no guarantee I'm going to sell this thing. And
Right.
also, you try to maintain those margins when you're buying inventory and selling it. It's not the same. And even the auction houses who don't have to put the money out ahead of time, which to me is key. They don't have to put the money out ahead of time. They work on pretty large margins, but that's of course assuming you don't count any of their overhead. Like,
Right, that's right. I mean, it's a competitive business, and they
yeah,
compete. This is the free market economy competing, and those auction companies are charging what they can bear versus
yeah,
their competition. And eBay keeps people in check, or
yeah.
retail shops, and all that.
Right. Well, this is kind of a gut question for you, just like what does your gut tell you? So it's interesting because in the price guides in the sheet, you take information that you're finding lots of sales, like Morgan dollars is just data, data, data everywhere because it's just traded constantly. And then you have a company that's bidding, say 20, 30% over what the sales are. How do you it's weird to me to think about what the real market is, right? Because basically you have one guy who's supporting a certain area of the market really by himself. And as soon as he lowers his bid, everything's going to come down.
Boom.
It is that tough for you? Like,
Yeah, yeah. That's why we add value, right? That's what the Greysheet is good for. We are experts at this kind of nuanced market changing and we are aware of who the bidders are, what the programs are that they're supporting, when we feel that it's not really a real number, as we say. So there's a lot of games played in this market. Every market with finances attached to it, you're going to see games, and so
Yeah.
we can cut through that. I have 35 or 40 years of experience buying and selling coins, and I was always someone who took that risk of what am I going to pay for this coin? What is my downside? What is my upside? So my background before coming to Greysheet and doing pricing was putting my money where my mouth is. And we saw a lot in COVID. We saw prices run on Morgan dollars almost 100% up. Now, in other collectibles like sports cards, we saw Michael Jordan rookie cards go up 1,700%. Now, what goes up comes down. That's very scary. And a Greysheet, we wanted to be careful about hard landings and things like that. So we didn't chase that market, as you say, as fast because I didn't think there was enough depth to it. So I chased
Yeah.
it a little more quietly, and then now we are tapering down a little bit on some of these program coins like Morgan dollars or Franklin half dollars. Areas that went up a lot are inevitably coming down in this post-COVID environment.
So when you now for the people who don't know, when you say program coins, what does that mean?
What you see there is so the coin business, like a lot of hobbies, is really participated by true collectors. The person who comes into your store or comes to coin shows when they come nearby and really wants to build his collection, whether it's Buffalo nickels or $20 gold pieces. And you also can go on eBay or other dealer websites and shop. But programs are actually what I refer to as bigger marketing companies that have decided to put real efforts behind support, let's say, of Silver Eagles or California gold pieces, which is this little crazy little thing, very niche business, but you can control the whole market because the coins aren't too expensive. If you could buy 5,000 of them, which you keep almost impossible to do,
Yeah.
you could create a program around that where you could go to investors and say, these are great value because they've been going up and up, or they've seen declines, and we predict a market upswing, and
Right.
they
So
are bought by these bigger companies.
right, it's a form of like mail order. You think mail order thing, if I may, if I may. This is I think where some of that stuff ends up. This is the newspaper and they've got things like this. So I think that you start to see some of it end up there. Yeah. And anyways,
Right.
that's a good explanation because I think a lot of people just you and I will buzz past certain
Well, and I would say,
words and then other people might not know the meaning.
right,
Yeah.
and I would say as a warning or a caveat to
Mhm.
the viewers here,
Yeah.
as someone who's been in the coin business a long time, anything you buy, if you buy from a newspaper or from an ad in a newspaper or off of a TV marketer, that's great. They have overhead, they have big costs. They have, it's kind of like buying a condo from the developer. You're always going to be better off in a secondary
Right,
market,
right.
but
Oh
because they
yeah,
have,
no. I
these
don't think
charges.
you need to defend anything here. I think, Mike, because what we already mentioned at the beginning was, hey, get 3, 4, or 5 references. The guys that do newspaper ads, they're looking for someone who's a novice, in my opinion, who's not going to get 3 or 4 prices. I see
Correct.
those ads all the time, and being in the shop, I buy coin collections that grandma or grandpa bought stuff from the paper and they never checked anywhere. I've had like one guy in the last 5 years come in with an ad and ask me ahead of time, like one. Like people don't ask, so
That's right. That's
you
right.
know,
And that's it's common sense, but at the same time, people aren't
yeah.
asking, and we want to protect your viewers and inform them about things
Yeah.
like that.
Well, right, and so I've always considered the Greysheet to be a good source of education for me because, in on our end, now people don't know this, but the engineer here at the shop, he'll send out emails to you guys. I don't know if it's weekly, but just saying, hey, I'm seeing these trend at this price point, and you guys are really good about saying on it. You guys double check him, and then you adjust the price based on the market. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
having that willingness to say, we're going to move to what we can see in the market, I think is very good as opposed to just saying, um, let me put it this way. I have people that they ask me like, is this some mysterious thing? Like these guys can just make the market. Like the Greysheet can make the market. And I think, well, they could, but that's not really how it works.
And we couldn't make the market, and that's my answer
Well,
to those
hey,
statements.
that's a good go ahead. Go ahead.
I
Like,
mean, as people say, if an 81S Morgan dollar and MS65 is worth 150, and I wake up tomorrow and say it's worth 200,
right.
in about 10 minutes, the market is going to say, well, the gray sheet is
Is
not
wrong.
credible, has lost
Yep. It's
credibility.
wrong. Yes.
And so it is our mission to be right wherever possible, and mark to market and be accurate, because we want to maintain that credibility.
Yeah.
So we can't just start changing things. We can't say they're worth $75 if you're paying 150, and we can't say they're worth 200. So we're very careful with that.
Yeah. That's good. That, it's the other side of the coin right there, right? So you look at people always just assume one thing, but if you ever turn it around and look at the other way, it's like, well, no, literally you couldn't do that
Right.
because because the stuff's trading on eBay, it's trading on Instagram, it's trading at auction. Like, and as soon as you guys are out of line, someone's gonna holler.
I
And
hope so. I
yeah,
hope
yeah, yeah.
so,
And the
because we
last thing
we
that you
respond.
want,
Yeah.
because you take it seriously, the last thing you
Yeah.
want is to be like, all wet at the end of the day. Like you want to be able to stand up and say, this is what I'm doing for the hobby, and I'm proud of the work that I do.
Right. Right. Well, we're very supportive of the fact that there's other price guides out there, and they all have different nuances. But the key for us is to win the credibility game. We're one of the few that charge for the pricing because we can't give it away. We do too much work to make the pricing, and we're too
Yeah.
diligent about it. So yeah, if you want to
But
use somebody else's pricing, and you should refer to it. But generally, we have to win the credibility game, and so the credibility game comes with not playing games, not pretending we control anything, and only trying to report that information wherever possible.
what so for those who don't know, people see a product like this and they look at it and they say, man, these big companies, how many people work at Greysheet?
Mm, less than 10.
Right? I mean, I when I found that out, it was one of those things that's also an eye opener because you don't always think about things when you see something, you think, I mean, people see stuff like this and I don't know what they imagine exactly, but for me, I was like, you've got to have so many people doing X, Y, and Z. And then after talking to some of your coworkers, I was like, oh, I know exactly what that's like to try to do as much as you can and more when you've got a handful of people working there. And I'm
Right.
really impressed, by the way, just to be able to put stuff out like this with the size of the company.
Yeah, we have a wonderful team. It's just been fantastic. I've been here 8 years. We took over from a company from the family business that Greysheet had been until 2015, and they had a death in the family, sadly. And I had just sold, got in the process of selling my coin company of David Lawrence Rare Coins, and so this was an opportunity that people in the industry that knew me said, "John, you should, jump in, and we all want the gray sheet to stay credible, and not just be run by a corporation and so
Thank
on."
you.
Yeah.
I
So I'm
I I
yeah.
am so for people who watch the channel all the time, they'll hear me say things. That people who hop in and out, they don't necessarily hear things I say, but I'm very much allergic, I'll say, to the corporatization of the coin market. And there are things that are going on currently that give me kind of the willies. And there's nothing that I can really do about it other than just educate people. Like,
Right.
I'm
Right.
just going to talk about the coin market as I know it and try to teach, and everyone else can try to figure it out. So, how did you say, people encouraged you? So, it wasn't just you woke up one day, it was like, hey, I'm going to buy the gray sheet. What, but, but that was going to be my question. Like, what led you to move from dealing to what you're doing today? Like, what really drew you into it?
Well, I started as a full-time coin dealer about 1992, and so that was 2 years out of college. I joined my dad, and we grew this business. And after about, he had ALS. He died of Lou Gehrig's disease, which was an awful experience, of course. But I managed the company through all of that, and then we kept growing. We were very much on the cusp of digital technology and so on. And but it was never my originally business was his. It was his dream to be a coin dealer. It was my dream to make a living, and to apply technology to
Yeah.
this because I went to business school, but I was also a computer programmer. So my dream was already fulfilled. And I thought, do I really want to be a coin dealer for the rest of my life? And I'd kind of wanted to get off the wagon. And so I was working on that. And as we were transitioning my role out of David Lawrence, is when Greysheet came up. And people also knew, some people knew that my mother was a journalist for 35 years. So I have journalism in my blood. I had desktop publishing in my blood for sure. That was what I graduated kind of with that sort of specialty in at Virginia Tech. So I already knew how to make books. I knew in magazines. I knew about journalism, and I knew that the Greysheet needed help because the Greysheet was getting very stale about that time, price wise, and so they were not reacting to price changes in the important parts of the market. There were large swaths of information they didn't cover at all. They just didn't cover lots of coins that didn't appear in their sheets. So I was really intrigued and excited by the idea of being a custodian, let's say, of this brand because it's an awesome brand. It was an awesome brand in 1963, kind of when it started,
Yeah.
and so I'm just trying to keep it going until the next caretaker, as it
Yeah.
were.
No, that's great. I like there was so much to unpack there. Well, first of all, I had it was actually Alan Rowe at Northern Nevada Coin that asked me, what type of a coin dealer do you want to be? And I think he asked me that question 2 years ago, and I still don't know. And so it's fun for me to hear the journey for you because it's like, well, you can be in this industry and enjoy it, and you don't have to go to 45 shows a year. You don't have to have I mean, there's so many things that you can do and still be in the hobby, which I think is fantastic. And that's true of most industries. You don't have to do job one. You don't have to be an NFL quarterback to enjoy being an NFL employee. That type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we had a similar story. My father was dealing in circulated barbers, but the problem was, as he needed to become a full-time job, is that you couldn't find enough better dates. You could find all the P mints, and you buy entire collections of barber quarters just to get the 7 coins that you never get to buy. And so I came along and I said, we need to get into Indian cents. How do we grow? Well, you grow into other collectible coins like
Yeah.
Indian cents and buffaloes. We
The
didn't
things that
touch.
he made you look for as a kid for
That's
full
right,
horns and full liberties. So you're like,
and we
Dad,
didn't.
wait, I know this stuff.
Right. We didn't touch silver dollars or gold coins in the early days because that was really capital intensive, and there was a lot of dealers already doing it. But
Yes.
nobody, I say nobody, there were like 4 people in the country that really cared about circulated coins, like Jack Beamer, who's still around today.
Yep.
I've known him since I was a little kid, and we made the transition that way.
Yeah, boy, that's interesting. I was just at the ANA show, and there was a guy looking for circulated barbers in like Find a VF, and I was like, how many coins are so much more? All this is my all the time go to is I tell people go to a show like that, you'll find 100 '09 SVDBs in Mint State,
Right.
but tell me how many nice Find a VF barber quarters you'll find.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
it, they're so scarce. It's a wild thing the way the market works because
Right.
you have supply and then you have demand. And I'm always intrigued when I look at stuff and I think about how much more rare a certain coin is than it is expensive. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like there's plenty
Well,
of things.
sure.
Go ahead.
It depends if there's a supply problem and a demand problem. So my dad would have famously had this expression where he'd say, "This coin is an R8." We call coins R1 through R8. R8 being unique, R1 being super common, and he would say, "The good John, the good news is this coin's an R8 or an R7, but the problem is the buyer's an R8."
Oh yeah.
So you have to match. So SVD 1909 SVDB pennies are everybody's on the tip of everybody's tongue, but they're quite common, as are high relief $20 gold pieces.
Yeah.
If somebody calls you and says, Ben, I want 10 of those and they're $20,000 coins, you'll say, give me a month, I got it. If I told you I want, VF 1897 and 1897S Barber Habs with full, nice detail and full liberty, you'll say, give me 10 years. and
Right.
then the coins are worth $300. You
Yep.
know.
Yep. Yep. Well, let me touch on a couple things quick before we run out of time here. What other products do you have besides the Greysheet?
Uh, so we are known for the Greysheet originally, which is the wholesale price guide for coins, and the Greysheet, which is the wholesale price guide for paper money, for U.S. paper money. So those are the two primary products that existed when I took over. We have since added, as I told you, the CPG guide, which is the collector price guide, which is a retail price guide. We've also added a CAC price guide, which is based on those same retail CPG numbers. And we have recently purchased something called the Bank Notebook, which is not in print, but it's a online database of about 320 different chapters, each chapter being a country for world paper money. So it is an amazing resource for people who love world paper money to go in and say Finland or
So
Zimbabwe.
is that a separate add-on?
Yes. So
Okay, it's its own product line and it's digital.
it's digital only.
Okay.
And what we're doing as a company, you know, the
Yeah.
modernization of this company is
Yeah.
that print is finite at some level. So we still honor the print tradition, and the people want magazines because there's so much pricing in a gray sheet. But you know what ultimately having access to it on your phone and your tablet is really the future. And of course, it's we can go much faster. You know, there's a 4-week lead time or 3-week lead time for a magazine. It's
Yeah.
already out of date. Whereas if you go online, it's immediate,
Yeah.
the pricing. So we're doing all of these things. Really, you know, we're honoring the tradition of print, and we're moving forward on our website. And so what we try to do is sell subscriptions for collectors anywhere from $10 to $200 a month, depending on the level of sophistication you have as a dealer.
Yeah. How tricky how tricky has it been for you to come to terms with the CAC market on holders over the last several years and price guide those?
You know, it's not that difficult. I mean, it's actually, you know, it's pretty discreet. In other words, there's actually more market support for CAC coins, so that
Mhm.
makes it easier. In other words, they're bids on our systems that people say, you know, we'll pay you know, $1,500 for a St. Gaudens, or let's say 2,000 for a St. Gaudens in MS65, but we'll pay 3,000 if it has a CAC sticker.
Yeah.
And that's easy to figure out. Well, then it's 3,000 because it is a, you know, very fluid market. And auctions, we see how they sell, and we typically would say markups are about 20% for CAC coins over non-CAC.
Do you see I know that there's some blue sheet imprint into the gray sheet. Blue sheet's the old school
Sight
one
unseen.
sight unseen certified, and I'm just curious. Well, sight unseen's tough because it's like, what is that? I mean,
It's it's lowest common denominator. It's awful.
right, right. So what I was getting at is you have the CAC bifurcation for the marketplace, but then you have PCGS and NGC. They literally, to me, like the CAC collector is different than the guy who doesn't care, right? And so to me, the PCGS collector is very specific, and the NGC collector usually is like, well, I'll buy anything, right? And not to be derogatory towards NGC, but I'm just saying there are certain different types of collectors out there in the marketplace, and it makes the price points different. And so, I'm just wondering out loud if there is a place for saying, hey, this coin really only trades for this price point in a PCGS holder. In an NGC holder, it's less because that PCGS collector, they're only fighting for the PCGS pop. They're not fighting for the whole pop,
Yes.
right? And so, do you see anything? Because now CAC is going to have their own holder.
Yeah.
Do you see some type of spot for you guys to be listing those separately, or not really?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, actually, I foresee a trifurcation,
Yeah,
if such a thing, of the
love
market.
it.
I think
Yeah,
what we're going to do is we're going to phase out this blue sheet, which is, like I said, it's meant to be the lowest value that a coin could be in a holder. So, like, let's say a PCGS, to keep using the Morgan dollar example, is $150 for a decent white coin, commercial acceptable coin, but only 125 if it's terrible and has like spotting or a scratch. So forget that. You can figure that out as an exception, because those are exceptions to the rule, but they end up driving the market sometimes because we see data and we see, well, one sold for 125. So what I see is getting rid of the blue sheet and then adding a PCGS value, an NGC value, and a CAC value could be any other grading services values that we track, and we'll have like gray sheets for those for each one because I think it's becoming necessary.
Do you think you'll end up doing the same thing for like old holders, OGH, doilies, soapbox, annex holders? I just want you to do everything for me, John. That's it.
Right,
Is that
right,
okay?
right. I mean, I wish I
Those
could. I wish I could,
those
but there's
those
it's
markets are
difficult.
kind of their own beast, right?
Yeah.
So you don't need to predict. You don't need to follow every last thing. I'm just curious
I
if.
can't- No, I mean, I say same thing with rainbow tone coins, right?
Oh
They're
heavens,
amazing color.
yeah,
I can't price that coin.
you can't
Um,
price it. Yeah.
um, hello.
Now you're there.
Okay, you froze, and I was still talking.
We both, well, yeah, on my end, you're frozen too. We're just going to go ahead and answer the question. Say, all the little minutia in the market, you can't cover all of it. If I can wrap up with one quick thing, um, well, now I'm going to go to like five different things, but just one quick thing here. Anything you still collect for yourself?
I collect the store tokens of encased postage, which is
Nice.
a really cool crossover
Yes,
between
it
where the
is.
stamp is encased,
Yeah.
and they're very very rare, and especially nice ones. They don't exist, and they're not very expensive considering this is the old R7, but the collector's R8. Coin dealers love them, stamp dealers love them, and yet they're just never around. So the market never went anywhere. But they're very cool tokens from
Yeah.
1861.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think that's a good way to end. I enjoy that very much. So I always like hearing what people are passionate about. Uh,
I even brought a tray to show your audience how they look.
oh, he's got that ready to go. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, that's my V nickels. I do have a set of V nickels. Sorry,
yeah. Yeah, it's okay.
but
Yeah,
these
I
are
like
what
the
these
old
coins look
school
like.
trays.
Yeah, and you got
You
some
know, if those were
reflection.
slabbed, would you still buy them?
I think there's a case for slabbing these. So
I think so too.
there's a case for, but they have it real quick. This is help people is that you got a mica case. You got this kind of you got a a clear mica cover of a metal case with a stamp. So there's three things to grade, and that's a real problem for the grading companies.
Hey, but if you start that grading company yourself, which I'm all in favor for, you get to
No thanks.
label them how you want to label them. I'm a big fan of NGC's ancient labels. I love the fact
Correct.
I wish the US market had more nuance to the labels, but that's just me. So,
You would have to grade them like ancients. Correct.
yeah, exactly, which is fine. The more information for the collector, I think the better. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
John, it was really a pleasure. I appreciate the time today, and we'll get together again. I know you've got your own podcast. If anyone wants information on the Greysheet, it's just greysheet.com. Is that correct?
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. All
Yeah,
right.
thank you for having me. Thanks, Ben. And I would love to have you on our podcast, and I'll turn the tables and ask you questions and all that. So I'm looking forward. Thanks so much.
Fire away. I don't know how to talk, so we'll figure it out.
Cheers.
All right, John. Take care. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.